I'm Kevin Mims with the Invading Sea, a Florida-wide media collaborative that reports on climate change in the state. As part of that effort, we've started the Business of Climate Change, a weekly interview with businessmen and women whose companies are either affected by the warming climate or address climate challenges. Today we're talking with Chris Evanich. Chris is the Program Director of Energy as a Service at Schneider Electric and has over 16 years of experience in the electrical power industry, working with power distribution systems, renewable energy technology, and microgrids. Chris, thank you for taking some time to talk about your work at Schneider Electric and how it relates to climate change here in Florida.
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
So let's first start off, if we can, with an explanation of your role at Schneider Electric and what Energy as a Service is.
Sure. So I'm responsible for microgrid business development and energy as a service. And microgrids are a power system that allows you to run both in parallel and then also be able to island from the grid during a time of need. It could be, if we're here in the state of Florida, it could be during a hurricane. You decide to island from that event. Now, energy as a service is a fairly new concept. And this is where people understand that they need this infrastructure. It could be renewable energy, it could be batteries and other pieces of equipment. But what's always hard for them is to be able to finance this. They didn't expect to spend this amount of money, and they don't have the expertise to operate this type of system. Which batteries do I buy? What type of solar modules or inverters do I use? So energy as a service is unique because it allows people to use a third party who would own and operate the equipment, and then you'd have a monthly fee that you would pay to have those assets on your site.
Got it. So Chris, can you give me just a little bit of background on Schneider Electric?
Sure. Yeah, so Schneider Electric, we're a firm that means different things to different people. We are an electrical provider who supplies breakers and distribution panels to homes and businesses. To a data center, we provide power quality equipment like UPSs. To a factory or a hospital, we provide automation and energy management. And to large corporations, we're also their energy advisor. But we believe really that everyone should have an access to energy. It's a basic human right. And our firm is focused on the safe, reliable, sustainable delivery of energy.
Got it. So Chris, can you define what resilience means in terms of energy systems and why that's important for Florida?
Yeah, so when we look at resilience for somebody such as a home, right? Everyone's going to have a different definition. A homeowner for themselves would have the food spoiled in their fridge. So they would say, we need to be resilient because if I have an outage that lasts so many hours, I'm going to have an entire fridge that I need to go and purchase new groceries for. If we look at a business, a grocery store, a coffee shop, for them, it's their point of sale. If they don't have power, they're not able to run their cash registers. They're not able to be able to continue their processes if they're cooking food or whatever they're doing, and that's a loss of business for them. So that's for them is very costly. You look at a city, a power outage within a city. What happens? Well, there's the traffic lights, right? The traffic lights go out. When that happens, you see traffic jams. Sometimes there's batteries in there. Sometimes they work if they're charged up properly. And then if let's look at some businesses. If you're a manufacturer, right? We have a lot of manufacturing here in the state. Without having a power outage to them, they're not able to produce their product. What do? Do they send those workers home? Do those workers now not get paid? You think about now they're trying to drive home, and there's the street lights that are out, right? And it's causing more traffic. And what if there's an emergency and the ambulance tries to go through, and now there's a traffic jam? And then we think of the hospitals now, right? The hospitals have a very high need for power, a very critical need for power. So all these, depending on who you are, there's a real different definition of what you need for resilience and how it affects you.
Okay. So Chris, on some of these services and infrastructure upgrades, they sound like they're certainly a step in the right direction, but how can Florida communities pay for them or access these programs?
Yeah, so here in the state, we actually have a couple of unique things that have been happening. The federal government through FEMA, because of COVID, has actually opened up funding for something called Building Resilience in Communities, the BRIC program. There's always lots of acronyms when you work with the government, but the BRIC program through FEMA is something that's open to actually all of the the public entities in the state of Florida that they can go and apply for some FEMA funding. There's also some funding through the Department of Energy as well, where you can go in and apply if you have a need for resilient infrastructure. So this is infrastructure such as solar and batteries that would allow you to be able to, again, not just run in parallel with the grid, be able to lower your carbon emissions and so on, but also during a time of need, right? Hurricanes that we have, and other, right, large storms throughout the summer. You're able to have a backup power system that you're able to still use during that event.
Can you give some examples of how energy systems here in Florida have been affected in the past during hurricanes or large storms?
Yeah, I think a good example, right? If we look back at like Hurricane Wilma, right? What happened? Major storm, I believe it was a Category 3 that actually hit. And we had power outages, for pretty much about a week, right? That affected part of the state to be able to get some people back up and restored. And then we look at Irma, right? Irma was even a stronger storm that came through at a Cat 4 into the state. And it was days for some people who were out of power. I'm in the Tampa Bay area, and there was folks in that area who were out of power for a week. So, I mean, those types of events, those types of different hurricane events, pretty devastating. I also think that, we see just kind of an unfortunate incident. They call them car pole accidents. It's, meaning the car just hits a telephone pole, a utility pole, and it causes an outage. It's pretty disruptive. We have a lot of wildlife, here in the state of Florida. Because of that, they get into the overhead conductors, or they get inside of the underground distribution equipment, and they cause outages. It could be snakes or frogs that we have, or the birds on the lines. And also all the big palm fronds that we have. Those big palm fronds, they look really nice, but they require a lot of maintenance. Anyone who's got a nice little garden at home understands that. They're always trimming some of those palm fronds on the weekends, but they get on the lines and they cause outages. So it's a combination of not just the big storms, the blue sky days today. Like today is a sunny day, but the wind's still blowing, and the animals are still out about, and same with the vegetation still continues to grow.
So how does Florida look right now in terms of resilience? I guess energy systems specifically, since there are lots of components to community resilience. Are we in good shape, or is there still a lot of work yet to be done?
Yeah, when we look at where we are today, again, it's based on, I think, our perception and our need for what we see as high quality power. I think 15 years ago, if I had a power outage for a couple hours, all right, I can make do, I'm good. Now you think about it, you have a power outage for 15 minutes, what happens? Well, we're not able to do this call because my home router goes offline, and I lose the internet connection, right? We think our perception today, like as we're just saying for residential people, residential homeowners, our perception of the need for power and the quality that we need it has definitely increased. It's definitely increased over the last decade because we're so digitally connected with all of the different technology that we use. But we think about it from businesses standpoint. If you remember when we looked at we always see at this time of year during the holidays where the United States Postal Service has those very fast sorters for the mail. We saw it during the election as well, where they show how fast they can sort out the mail. A outage in milliseconds of an outage, a power outage, not even just a dip in the voltage, not even the lights going on, just a dip in the voltage, that shuts down that machine. It does the same thing at a data center. The data centers have UPSs that try to keep that as that system running. Large distribution centers it could be for grocery stores, it could be for delivery services. Those distribution centers are very high speed, automated, sophisticated systems. And if those have an outage, and again, I'm not talking seconds, it's milliseconds. So what we've seen over the last I'd say 5 to 10 years is that we've shifted from kind of analog, operations to very digitalized operations. And we do that because lots of efficiencies, lots of data. But as we've shifted over to this digitalization of everything that we do, just be more efficient, we've actually increased the need for higher power quality, right? Again, it's not that a 15-minute outage before for me, all right, no big deal. Now, oh, 15 minutes. Everything's got to restart, and I'm out of I'm out of commission, and it's very devastating to a business, right? Businesses that it takes them a long time to get back up and started to redo those assembly lines.
Okay, so how, with all of this new technology and the switch from digital to analog, and how has climate change specifically kind of affected how you guys are putting those systems in, and what are you seeing on the business side of that, with climate change and how business are reacting to all of the new technologies?
Yeah, so when businesses look at we need resilience, what do? I'm gonna go put a diesel generator in. All right, well, diesel generators, it's not clean. It's a asset that's only used during the time of that outage, which might be a couple times a year. It's not giving them that seamless transfer, meaning I talked about that couple milliseconds. It's a couple seconds, 60 seconds, right? You got a power outage, 60 seconds later, the diesel generator starts up. Plus fuel storage of diesel, you have to maintain it. So we see a lot of people going, why am I putting a diesel generator in? It's environmentally it's difficult. It's operations of it and so on. So they go, well, it's an alternative. And 2020 was a big year for many reasons, but 2019 was a very big year when it came to energy. And it was a big year because the price of solar and wind actually hit grid parity. And that's a big deal because that means that the solar assets can produce energy and wind can produce energy at the same cost or lower than what the electric grid is. So that's a big deal. So now people can go, well, wait a minute, instead of that backup diesel, could I put solar in, right? We're in the sunshine state. And that's why we've seen an absolute tremendous amount of solar going in, on installations. But now the issue is you need something like it's called an anchor resource or a voltage source. Something, if you have a power outage with solar panels on your roof, you're still out of power, right? It's not going to be able to do that transfer for you. You need something to provide you a voltage source like a battery system. So now 2019 was a big year. I told you about the grid parity, but was also a big year in the automotive industry. 2019 was the first time in the top 10 an electric vehicle was the most popular vehicle sold. That's important because the electric vehicle market drives the cost of batteries. And what happens? Now we're in the top 10. We see a lot of cars being made, electric vehicles, and now the cost of batteries continues to decline. And we see businesses installing battery energy storage systems. So what they'll do, they'll have solar, they'll have batteries, and in time of an outage, they can run off that solar and battery system. And then during just a blue sky day, they get the benefits of the solar energy. They can use the battery then to help lower demand charges off their electric bill. And then during an outage, they run off of that system. So today when we see, what are options for resilience? It used to be, I put a diesel in. Now we actually see, you actually can use renewable energy, carbon-free emissions, and be able to get that same benefit that they had before. And I should say, even, if you remember in Irma, 2018, right? 2018 was Irma. You remember what happened? There was no fuel. We saw a week before, and I know in Tampa at least, a week before the hurricane hit, there was no gasoline, no diesel, and we saw it a week later, right afterwards, after the storm as well. So that's not something you want to be dependent on. Is that to have that fuel source.
So, are there places in Florida now that are developing microgrids, or especially like Florida communities? Are there community-wide microgrids, or are these just specifically for individual businesses? How do we look at this on a community level and energy resilience across the whole community?
Yeah, so we're starting to see the shift of assets being installed just at one business or just at one home, and then serving a community. Some good examples of that have been happened in California. We saw it in the South and in Alabama as well. And we're actually just starting to see it here in the state of Florida, where developers, what they're doing is, as they're building out their homes in the community, they're putting solar on the roof, they're putting some other solar assets that are centrally located, like at a clubhouse, and then they're having a battery system as well that's providing that voltage source. They're even including a natural gas generator, right? The natural gas supply is something that's pretty resilient. So for them, they say, you know what, we can build this community, runs off solar and batteries, solar during the day, batteries at night. There's an outage, it can still run off of that. We're seeing a lot of communities, we're starting to see the request from homeowners, which I think is very interesting. It's very interesting. We're starting to see homeowners say, I want to live somewhere that allows me to be this net zero community, a carbon-free community. We're starting to see that, and also you get the reliability, right? Now I'm not dependent on the grid. I have my local generation assets here. One thing that was interesting, I think in Canada there was a project where a community had a microgrid with solar and batteries that was powering a community center, and it was used in the time of an outage. And it was interesting that the community was very interested in how it worked, how much capacity is left in the system. Another example, it was also in Canada a couple of years ago. There was a small microgrid system that actually powered 100 homes, and the community, what they would do is they would actually get a tweet to notify them that if there was an outage and they were running on the system, because you don't know. I didn't know if there's an outage. I still have power. And what people actually do is start to conserve energy. So the point there is that we actually see people starting to become prosumers of energy. Today, most people are consumers. I turn the switch on, I get my lights turn on, that's it. I don't have any control over my energy. It just comes from the utility. Now we're seeing people be prosumers. It's very interesting. Where's my energy coming from? How much carbon emissions is that generation source? Is there something I could have locally at my site? And then when they're actually using that energy, is there things I could do to be more efficient? Should I have things on timers, or is this device really energy intense? Maybe I should switch to something else that consumes less energy.
Okay, so are there communities in Florida now? Do you have any examples of these projects being done here in Florida by any chance?
Yeah, there's a couple communities that are being developed right now. A good example is something that's been complete is at Babcock Ranch. So Babcock Ranch near Naples is a good example. It was our first sustainable community that utilizes renewable energy. So Babcock Ranch is a nice example just outside of Naples.
What about smaller communities, especially those right along the coastline? How do they start to develop strategies when it comes to energy?
Yeah, so we definitely see the communities that are near the coast that are most susceptible. They're most susceptible because they get the highest amount of wind during any type of storm. They're very susceptible because of flooding as well. And I find that the communities on the coast, within the communities, the individuals that are responsible for sustainability are really engaged, really sharp. Like what I mean by that is they're engaged with, like myself, my firm, like of what type of technology is out there. What is the newest technology? What are people putting in? And as they're engaged with that, they're able to make better decisions on what's actually feasible. We see things, we hear about technology such as using the tides, right? Where you can have a generator in the ocean. That's neat, but we don't have big tides here in Florida like they would in Maine, right? Or Nova Scotia that you see. It's neat technology. The point is, what we see is the sustainability folks who are responsible for sustainability within the communities. They do a really good job. They already looked at that technology. They get it. They know if it's a fit or not. They know if solar's a fit or not. They know where they would put assets. And they're the ones who are developing the plans. They're working with the cities, are working with the counties, and the counties are putting together some hazard mitigation plans as well. So they're going through this process of what do microgrids look like for our community, and where would they go, and how would we operate them? And the other part is they're looking at is how would we finance it? They do a really good job of going after different grants, again, with both at the state, the federal level, and I'm really impressed with them. They do a good job.
Okay, so when Florida communities are looking at their energy plans, how long does it take generally for some of these systems to be implemented?
Yeah, when we look at a system that's using solar generation and a battery, you're typically you're going to be limited based on your longest lead time item. Meaning what's going to be the longest type of device that's going to be to procure. And what we see is the battery systems today, because there's such a demand on those systems, they're several months out. They're about 4 months out of a lead time. But what typically happens is when somebody gets the go ahead to move forward on a project, they start getting their permits. They start buying the solar panels. They order the battery. The panels come in first. They install those. By that time, the battery's here. They install the battery. So you can look at a complete solution, start to finish, to be operational within 6 months.
And that's for just like a typical business?
Yeah, a typical business could probably be a little bit quicker, but if we were doing something bigger, like for a community or at a hospital, that's where it would be. It could take 6 months, and depending on how complex it is, it could be longer.
So, Chris, what's happening with fleets and this type of technology?
Yeah. So we're seeing the fleets actually moving a lot faster as they go over to the electrification, switching over from engines compared to the consumers. So we saw in 2019, it was the first time we saw an electric vehicle in the top 10 most popular sold for residential, for consumer market. But in the industrial sector, we're actually seeing a very large shift of electric fleets, of fleets going into electric. So this is regarding buses and semi trucks, and we're seeing this shift because it's such a savings. It's a tremendous amount of savings in operation expenses that businesses will have. A good example with that is we're working with PACCAR. So PACCAR manufacturers like Peterbilt and Kentworth. And what we're helping them with is developing that charging infrastructure for their dealers across the country, so that they can make sure that they're ready for that big shift, that change.
So, Chris, what do you think the state legislature's role is with some of this? Are there things that lawmakers should be doing when it comes to Florida's energy systems related to climate change?
Yeah, I think we look at the renewable portfolio standards, and majority of the states already have a standard. There's, I think, 11 or 13 states now that have a goal of 100% renewables. As we continue to move towards our path of lowering carbon emissions, it's something that consumers want, right? If we listen to what do consumers want, we see the shift towards electric vehicles. We see the shift towards renewable energy. I think what we'll see, or what we should be seeing within the legislature is more of a push to continue that installations of that renewable energy. Whether it's solar, it could, if it's wind, or if it's maybe off of a landfill, right, or renewable natural gas off of a landfill. There's many different forms, but right, I think we're going to continue to see that drive to push it, to push the major utilities to install it. There is a rule in the state of Florida, something called net metering. So it actually allows, it's helpful to businesses who go and install and residential customers generation assets, solar specifically. And essentially it's a credit, right? The amount of energy that you use, if you is just offset by the amount that you produce. So if you produce more, you're using the grid essentially as your battery. So the net metering law is something that's helpful to businesses and communities as they try to continue down this path, to have that legislation in place, because it's going to help with their economics overall with the system.
Chris, that's all I had. I appreciate your time.
All right, thanks. I appreciate being here. Thank you.